Well, welcome. You're listening to the Renagade River Show. My name is Mike Hewitt. I'm in the studio today with Jim Riley.
And I'm back again, and great afternoon, Muskegon. Beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. On the line with us today is Bill Cooper. Bill Cooper is a successful entrepreneur and a former congressional candidate. Bill, welcome to the Renagade River Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike and Riles.
Great to be here, buddy. Great to have you here.
No. He's going to be called Riles from now on.
Riles works for me, baby.
I like that a lot, Bill.
It's a significant step above what most would prefer to call me, so I'm tickled with that.
No question about it. Bill, you're in Arizona this morning, aren't you?
I'm in Arizona right now, yeah.
Well, just before we get into politics and saving America, what's the weather like out there?
You know, I will say this time of year, the weather, I don't even have to watch the weather. In fact, the weather out here, when they have them on TV, they talk more about the weather around the country than they do the weather here because it's so consistent. This time of year, it's like right now, today it'll probably be 83, 84 during the hottest part of the day, and at night it gets down to about maybe 62, 63.
Yeah, it reminds me, I've got a brother who lives out in Vegas, and whenever he sees snow reports for Michigan, he'll call to make sure I know that he's going golfing that day.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But, I'll tell you what, though, the summers are brutal. I mean, it's not 110 or 112 that's really that bad. It's 80 straight days of 112 degrees that's that bad. You know what I mean? It just wears on you. So,
yeah,
fortunately, I'm not here a good part of the summer. I'm back in Michigan.
Yeah,
I'm actually, I can make this announcement on this show, I think. I don't know who knows me that'll be listening, but I'm actually going to be back there, I think, at the end of May.
Well, Bill, I'm excited to hear you're coming back, but how come you're not coming back sooner to enjoy a little bit of Michigan winter and lake defect snow and all that?
Well, I'm actually back there probably every 6 weeks. I come back for a while. I have business in Michigan, obviously, and it's still my home. I'm still a Michigan resident, so I'm back. I get just enough of weather to make me excited to come back to Arizona in the winter. But I'm coming back in May because my kids are actually in school out here. And
okay.
When they get out of school, we're coming back. We had a little family discussion, and it's time to come home.
Very, very nice. It's funny that you put it that way because I've been all over the United States, and inevitably I've never been able to call anywhere else home other than right here.
Right. That's the way I feel too. That's the way my wife and my kids feel, and that's where our friends, our family, most of my relationships are there. And so we're coming home, and we just wanted to get away for a little while. It was the congressional race probably took more out of me than I ever wanted to admit. And when that was over, I just thought, I was getting asked to speak at events and do different things, and I thought, I just need to break away from this for a while. Otherwise, you can fall into this trap where, I always say when people ask me about running for Congress, and I say, it's the busiest I've ever been in my entire life and the least productive I've ever been in my entire life, because it's not like you really doing anything or making anything. You're just talking. You're just listening to yourself talk at chicken dinners and towns around West Michigan 3 days a week, 4 days a week, every single day. You have 10, 15 appointments, but you're not really getting anything done. You're just talking, and it was really frustrating for me. So,
what do you when you look at the election process, Bill? I agree with you, by the way. I ran for state representative, which is just
right,
obviously a much less intense campaign than you went through. But what do you think is missing in the election process in ingredients that we've got going in America?
I don't want to criticize the process too much because I still think, even though it's flawed and it's not fair and all these other things you can say, but you know what? It's representative of life. Life isn't always fair and life isn't perfect. But if I was going to say there's one thing that we could fix, we should fix, or I would like to think optimistically we could fix, I would say the single biggest problem in our country and in fact in the same thing with our elections is that so few people pay any attention at all to what's going on. People just don't know. They have no idea. And I mean, when you can go out, a lot of people laugh when you see Jay Leno do man on the street type stuff. For me, I get a pit in my stomach because I watch these people walk out there and ask them, they show them a picture of, Nancy Pelosi, and like 1 out of 14 people can I even tell you who she might be. They show you pictures of our vice president. People don't even know our vice president. People will show pictures on the street of people of like John McCain, and they won't even realize. They'll think that he's Joe Biden. I mean, it is to me alarming, it's alarming how little people know. So if you said, what's my biggest criticism of the election process, it's just how few people pay attention to what's going on and even have any idea at all what's happening. You know that 36% of Americans cannot name a single right in the First Amendment. When you think about that, it's like that's what you're up against when you're running for office, especially if you're not a known name. And you listen to guys like Chuck Yob, I know I'm going too long already, sorry, but you listen to guys like Chuck Yob, he's a big consultant. When you first meet with him, he starts talking to you about how many dollars it will take to raise your name ID 1 percentage point. And I'm just looking at him like, you know, that's what's more important. That's more important than you know what you stand for, what you believe in, what you could get accomplished, what you could undo. None of that. That's all secondary. It's name ID because so people pay so little attention to what's going on.
Well, Bill, I agree 100%, and I'll say this somewhat tongue in cheek, but it's probably true, and it's as sad as it might be funny. But had you made a last minute change in your name when you were running for Congress,
I know.
to Billy Gaga, you might very well have won. And that's the level that we've sunk to. And just this week, you're not probably aware of it, but we have an election coming up in a couple weeks. And in Muskegon, it involves the mayor of Muskegon and 2 city council members that will be ultimately elected. And Honey Bunch and I went and I videotaped both events. And they were snoozers. And here's the problem. I think one of the reasons that so many young people and perhaps interested older folks, too, are not as interested in learning the things that we ought to learn is that the media has absolutely not done their job. And what we had in these 2 debates that were put together by the august group of the M Live group, which, of course, is the remnants of the Muskegon Chronicle, but the Muskegon Chamber of Commerce, and of course the Muskegon Community College. So you would think that those 3 groups would have really put together, you know, a time set aside to really inform us. All of the questions were, for the most part, similar to what you would see in a presidential debate. Softball questions with absolutely no follow-up questions, and therein lies, to me, the ultimate problem, and that is that when those people who do take the effort to go out and say, look, I'd like to educate myself, I'd like to find out what's going on, you know, but I'm pretty much limited to television, which is the way most people are when it comes to learning about what events are going. The media is just not doing its job whatsoever.
You know, and I'm not arguing with you because I would probably tend to agree that that's true. Well, I definitely think the media, and we all know about media bias, but we don't want to spend the whole show talking about that. But Riles, when you think about it, people complain about lobbyists and the influence of lobbyists in Washington and Lansing. People complain about lobbyists all the time. They complain about the media. People complain about all these extraneous things. In my opinion, I think the single biggest problem is the amount of power and authority we've given over to people, for people to represent us, and how little people pay attention to that. Because the truth is, lobbyists don't have much influence if people pay attention to what's going on. We still have to, you know, like, let me just say a huge mistake. I mean, I haven't been called or asked to be a consultant on a national political campaign yet. But if I was, what I would say to them is, everybody is trying to emulate what Reagan did. It's like every quarterback in high school trying to be what Brett Favre was. Just be yourself. But you know, everybody's trying to be what Ronald Reagan was. When he talks about this shining star on a hill, and he talks about how great America is and how our best days are ahead of us, and everybody tries to emulate that message. And to me, Riles, that's the big mistake. Because in my opinion, I can't wait until a leader comes along. Because in 2013, I don't think we want a Reagan right now. I think what we need a person that can stand up there and scold the citizens of the United States of America. And I know that goes completely against conventional wisdom and consulting wisdom and everything else. But our electorate needs to be told that you are derelict in your duty. We have a responsibility in this country to govern ourselves. And most of us, what percentage of adult males spend more time on their fantasy football team or women on what Kim Kardashian's going to name her baby than they do on governing themselves? And it's a required part of our government. It's required for our success in our country, and people just don't pay attention. So that's just my opinion.
I agree.
I think you're spot on, Bill, but you know, I've got to default to my sister Brenda a little bit here, as I do once in a while. Brenda says the problem with you, and she's referring to us in general that are involved in the political arena. She says the problem with you people is that you don't drill things down to what it means to the average citizen. And so
Yes.
the average citizen tunes you out.
Well said.
She says, so when you're talking about 17 trillion or 70 trillion or what Common Core means to the state of Michigan in some big general envelope, it doesn't tell the average person how it's going to impact that person. What does a $17 trillion debt mean to somebody who didn't have a different lifestyle when it was only a $12 trillion debt? And let me dovetail that a little bit. When I was a candidate, I had there was a candidate debate that the local media had actually sponsored, I think the Grand Haven Tribune in cooperation with somebody else. And it was really, really heavily, relatively speaking, heavily advance noticed to the public. And so that day came, there were 8 candidates on the stage. And we look out into the crowd, and there was about 100 people there. And so as we're waiting for it to begin, we're trying to identify the groups of people. Okay, that group goes with this candidate. There's his sister and his mother and his brother. There's her mother and her father. And when we got all said and done, of the 100 candidates or the 100 people in attendance, only 3 or 4 of them were concerned citizens. And that was I find that just flabbergasting, but it goes to everything you're saying. But the reason I have come to believe, the reason I think is what my sister says, and that's that we don't reduce these scoops down to the lower end.
And I don't. I mean, now we're splitting hairs because ultimately, the citizenry can blame it on the politicians. I think that we have the most representative government you could imagine today. In fact, when people say Congress has a 6 or 8% approval rating, I think that it's almost like Americans looking themselves in the mirror and saying the way we've handled our affairs, I give myself about a 6 or 7% approval rating because they're representative. Isn't it funny that the Congress's approval rating is 6 or 7 or 6 or 8%, but each individual congressman in their own district is nowhere near that low.
97% reelection rate.
Right. Oh yeah. In a bad political year, in a really bad political year like 2008, and even in a year like that, 90% of incumbent politicians will be reelected. But you know what, Jim? That goes a long way because of name ID. People know the name. It sounds familiar. This is a line that used to just crack me up. These consultants would tell me, hey, Bill, if you shake a man's hand, if you give a good man a good firm handshake and look him in the eye, he's 75% more likely to vote for you. And I thought to myself, damn, don't you think that every politician in America that's worth his salt knows that statistic? And once every politician knows that statistic, don't you think they can get really, really good at giving you a firm handshake and looking you in the eye? Yeah. And that's it. That's all. If you think about that, that is an indictment of the citizenry. That all it takes is a good handshake and looking you in the eye and smiling, and you got a 75% better chance of getting that guy's vote.
No question. No question about it, Bill. But it goes to the word association. It's like the people that will wear a Detroit Lion. They'll go pay $300 or $400 for a Detroit Lion jacket. And I'm thinking, you're going to pay that kind of money to turn yourself into a billboard for a corporation. Right. But the bottom line of it goes to the pyramid of motivators, and at the top of it is association and recognition. So it's the same as if you take Nancy Pelosi as an example. She's fairly scorned, at least on my side of the ideological divide. But when she walks into a big public event, she's treated like royalty.
Yeah.
And you go, wait a minute. I thought we all hated her. How come we're tripping over ourselves now to try to be near her and get a picture with her, etc.?
Let me jump in here. I agree again with the spirit of what you're saying here. But again, the average human being, certainly the average American, we have lives, we've got families, we have jobs, we've got hobbies. We're interested in watching Lady Gaga and Kim Kardashian and things of that sort. But people do take the time, and they used to take the time to read newspapers. They take the time to watch television. They take the time to listen to the news media. The problem is that our news media has now become so corrupt, so one-sided, and they ask the softball questions. And again, you can hopefully you'll have more of a life, but you can go to my website, MuskegonPundit.com, and you can look at these 2 videos of the MCC, the Muskegon City mayoral debates, and you'll see the emptiness. And I think you can have a real argument that our media is letting us down, because people do believe in civic duty. Many of them, anyway, believe in their civic duty to educate themselves before they vote. But it's almost impossible to get real information about what people stand for, and in particular about their successes or the lack thereof when they have been in elective office or even in whatever their previous careers have been.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Ralph. But it all comes back to people finding other things that are more important than governing themselves, and then we get what we get. We get the situation we're in now. But I don't disagree with what you're saying.
What's that old saying from like 430 BC? Just because you don't take an interest in politics or just white politics will take an interest in you. Well,
yeah.
And I say that, of course, I'm paraphrasing it, but I offer that quote because I think the conversation or the frustration we're talking about now, I mean, that quote was trying to explain this from 400 some years before Christ.
Right.
We're talking about a long history of disengagement in a Republican form of government.
Well, so we all agree there's a problem. Yep. But we've got the three of us, as a matter of fact, have all run for public office within a relatively short period of time. What can be done that might have a chance of success to make things better, Bill?
Riles, I'm the wrong guy to call for the positive message. I really am, and that's another reason why people might tune you out, because you don't have a positive message. So people might be turning their station right now. But I can tell you this, in the last 2 or 3 years, over 12 million Americans have filed for bankruptcy. The reality is a lot of people make a miscalculation or misjudge their ability to pay back debt. I think our country is in the same situation, and I don't have a positive message. I really believe that the best way, or that there's the best, I think that what's likely to happen in order for people to pay attention is for it to affect them personally more than it does now. And those are the people that are probably going to become engaged first. And I think that our country is headed for bankruptcy. I know it sounds crazy. I said, people, if you have any libs out there that may be listening going, oh, that Cooper guy is crazy, but it's just, the facts are the facts. I'm not optimistic. I think that our country is going to have to hit rock bottom at some point. I hope that after we do, we can bounce back, but I don't know.
Well, we know the state of Michigan, just simply the state. Of course, the biggest one is the bankruptcy of Detroit, and we'll see how that plays out. But here, even in Muskegon, we have the Muskegon High School District is already bankrupt. The Muskegon Public Schools District has already announced that they cannot handle their own affairs, and that's been taken over by MAISD.
Okay, we're gonna have to slip to a break, folks. We'll pick up on that in just a few minutes.
This is News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renagade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renagade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
When big news is breaking, when Washington's arguing again, the iHeartRadio app can take you there with first-hand local coverage from the radio stations across the country you depend on. The iHeartRadio app also helps you follow your favorite college and pro football teams with insider information you want. Best of all, the iHeartRadio app is free. Get the inside word from across the country with the touch of a finger. Download the iHeartRadio app today on your smartphone or tablet.
The Boy Scouts aren't the only ones who try to live by the motto, be prepared. All of us in business try too. It's a good business goal, but it's not always possible, especially getting everyone together at the last minute. So I stay better prepared with GoToMeeting by Citrix. It's the powerful and simple way to meet and collaborate online whenever you need, wherever you are. Just this week, we were sharing screens in different cities, working together on documents, spreadsheets, and projects in real time. Best of all, our inexpensive webcams turned our meeting into a group HD video conference. And listen to this. Members of our meeting group were using Macs, PCs, and one was on their smartphone, and I was on my iPad. GoToMeeting made it easy. Here at the Kim Komando Show, we couldn't do without it. Start hosting a meeting in seconds from your computer or mobile device by signing up for a free 30-day trial. There's no credit card required to get started. Visit GoToMeeting.com, click the Tried Free button, and use promo code KIM. That's GoToMeeting.com, promo code KIM. Meeting is believing.
If you're a responsible homeowner who's faithfully made your mortgage payments, you deserve thanks for doing the right thing. And I'd like to tell you about a powerful financial tool that rewards your responsibility. Hi, I'm Jay Farner, president of Quicken Loans. And the tool that I'm talking about is the Home Affordable Refinance Program, or HARP. HARP is designed to help you lower your mortgage payments. It's for responsible homeowners who are current on their payments, but due to the housing market may have little or no equity left in their home. And even if you were unable to get a HARP loan in the past, new guidelines mean that now you may be eligible. Over 2.5 million homeowners have already taken advantage of HARP and are saving an average of $250 a month. If you're one of the millions yet to take advantage, call us today at 800-QUICKEN. To learn more, call Quicken Loans today at 800-QUICKEN or go to QuickenLoans.com. That number again is 800-QUICKEN.
Important terms and conditions apply. Call us for cost information. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
We all know it's impossible to predict the weather. But if you want a guarantee on the weather, don't look to the weatherman. Look to Toro. Get to Lake Nursery on Colby Street in Whitehall and buy a Toro snowblower by November 15th. If your area gets less than 10% of its average snowfall this winter, you'll get a full refund thanks to the Toro S no-risk guarantee. Half the average snowfall means you get 10% back. Either way, you keep your Toro. Get to White Lake Nursery today or visit toro.com/snowrisk for details. Toro, count on it.
Renagade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renagade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Well, welcome back. You're listening to the Renegade River Show. I'm in the studio, I'm Mike Hewitt in the studio with Jim Riley.
You betcha.
And on the air, on the telephone with us, I should say, is a former congressional candidate, extraordinarily successful entrepreneur, Bill Cooper.
Yes, Bill.
I love the song.
I do too. It just is absolutely when I scanned for songs, I got to this one. I said, "That's us. That's it."
That's good.
It says a whole bunch too.
Hey, I want to just jump in on something just to remind you. Bill's out of town, but Honey Bunch and I went with many, many folks here in beautiful Muskegon, and we saw the sad, I think terribly sad, but the tipping, the collapsing, the somewhat implosion of the biggest remaining building of the paper mill just happened this morning. And
I saw a video of that, believe it or not.
Yep.
One of my family members just sent me a video of that. They were there too.
Okay, and of course, if you can go on M Live, you'll see it, and I'll post it on my blog later on, but we were happened to be standing next to some folks, one of whom had spent 37 years as an employee over there, and very bittersweet for them. Obviously, it's something that happened a bit ago with the closing of the building, but we are suffering the results of bad government at a variety of levels. People are losing their jobs. Cities are imploding in the same manner that businesses are. So we are suffering, but it seems nobody is willing to hold the top people, the elected people, at fault.
I got to tell you, I think Bill was on the right page earlier. When I really believe when I looked at our elected government, whether it's local, state, or federal, that they're an absolute perfect reflection of the electorate. I think he's exactly right with that train of thought. One of the things you touched on earlier, Bill, was education. And we've certainly talked a lot about education on this show over the last year, Common Core of most recent, but in general, there's an SAT score graph floating around the internet, and it shows the average persons that were born in 1952 and what they scored on SAT, and then they showed the graph continues, a person born in 53, 54, all the way through to a person born in 1992, what they would have scored or what they scored average on SAT. And when you look at it in total, there was never a single year where it plateaued or went up. Every single year for 40 years, the SAT score results went down.
Yeah.
And then if you set that exactly beside a graph of public school funding, the graph then goes up at the exact same angle without retreat for the same 40-year period.
Right. I doesn't surprise me. And, I don't think it's just, obviously cause and effect. It's not just more money creates lower test scores, but it certainly doesn't help the test scores, which is proven that just throwing more money at a problem doesn't necessarily fix the problem. But when you think about it, our country spends the second largest amount of money on education per pupil of any other country in the developed world. And of course, the other side will say, well, that's because other countries only educate their smart kids and they don't educate the kids that don't make it into school. But the reality is we spend the second largest amount of money on education of any other country in the developed world. And we don't even rank we rank, I think, 29th in math or 32nd in math and 29th in science, the things you can measure against other countries. So obviously our education system is not successful. But, I don't know if there are any questions on the SAT regarding, diversity training or sensitivities or things like that. And the more time we spend teaching those type of things in schools, the less time we have teaching things that you can compare against other countries.
If you get on the internet and take a peek at this, but if you look at literally the average brick and mortar school building from, say, 1930 and compare it to a brick and mortar high school of our era, I mean, it's almost comical, the difference. And yet their results were vastly superior to ours. And part of the difference in my mind is that educating folks used to be a mission, and now it's a question of how much dough can I make in the least amount of time that I have to work.
Well, let me add something that just happened here this week in Muskegon County, the Big Crunch. Now, you may not be aware of this one, Bill. Most people outside of the county aren't, but the M Live made a big deal about it. The much of the media did. Apparently, New Zealand held the Guinness World Record of most people biting into an apple at the same time. And the Denzians who run our schools here said, oh, my golly, the most important thing we can work on this entire week here in Muskegon County, because all of our kids are getting, massively high SATs and the rest of it. They decided to spend an enormous amount of time, and all sorts of T-shirts, hundreds of T-shirts were distributed. I don't know where those T-shirts came from, or at least where the money came from. But the Muskegon County was able to break the record of the Big Crunch by having some number of thousands of children eating an apple. So this is what has replaced the reading, writing, and arithmetic. It is the enviro, the health, the free T-shirt, everybody kumbaya, Guinness World Records. I'm not even sure what percentage of these kids who were involved in the Big Crunch do you think could find New Zealand on a map?
Yeah, I don't know. And you know what, though? I kind of separate from conventional wisdom. I actually feel I have a lot of empathy for teachers. I really do. Now, I'm not saying they don't make a decent living for what they do, and their union is fought for, pretty good retirement benefits and things like that. But, the reality is we ask teachers to do so much more than we ever did before. I mean, they're responsible to educate. You can't get bad kids out of the school very easily anymore. Now they're expected to find a way to make them mesh into the classroom. They certainly can't. I mean, you can't even say you can't spank kids anymore because people will look at you like you're crazy, and they'll say, "Well, I mean, you could at one time." But I mean, they're expected to do. Parents have almost relinquished their authority to raise their children and handed it over to the schools. The schools are supposed to feed them breakfast, feed them lunch, come up with after-school programs for them, teach them manners, teach them social graces, teach them teach them how to be a man, teach them how to be a woman, or teach them how to be the same in some kind of a unisexual way. I mean, I just feel like teachers have been asked to do so much now that I'm not defending the Apple Crunch thing, but come on, You want to hear one? I have this list of 10 reasons why I think that America is probably finished. Not necessarily this week or next week, but in the not too distant future. And education is on that list. But one of the things, some of my things are actual factual numbers. Some of the things are just anecdotal type things. This is an anecdotal thing. But I was watching on ESPN a while back the National Spelling Bee. Have you ever seen that on ESPN?
Yes, it's cool.
It's really cool. It was really moving. It's heartwarming. And you want to know what's incredibly sad about it? And now, I don't want to say anything racist or biased, but this is just, when I look at it anecdotally from a distance, 8 of the 10 finalists in the ESPN Spelling Bee were obviously not of American. They weren't of European descent. the majority of the people that originally came, they were almost all of Indian or Pakistani or the Middle Eastern descent and or Asian. I mean, and it was, if you look at this, and that's a great thing. But my greater point is, Caucasian Americans that are the vast majority of our population, and it's decreasing, but still the vast majority of our population were less than 20% of the finalists in the ESPN Spelling Bee. And I know that isn't a politically correct statement to make, but if you just think about that anecdotally, it's like, our own kids that have probably been in this country for 4, 5, 6 generations, 10 generations, can't compete. They can't compete in a spelling bee.
They can't compete in my mind, though, Bill. I mean, what's always obviously important, but why is fundamental. We have to get to the whys. And when we're talking about education earlier, if it's almost one of those self-fulfilling prophecies, because we're not looking. We have a tendency in our society nowadays of looking at snapshots and talking about just today. But the problem with it is that, and to your point in defending teachers to a degree, teachers have to, they used to have a partnership with parents. So parents at home could work with Sally and John and get them studied up. But we're several generations into the decline of education. So frankly, mom and dad are not qualified to help Sally and John.
Yeah, but you guys are missing the point here. Bill, you're bringing up an anecdote that I'm sure is true. I think we've all seen it. But we now see that our education establishment, with the support certainly of the vast majority of the Democrat Party, and here in the state of Michigan, because we just voted for it, the Republican Party is going forward with this new way to fix our schools called Common Core.
Right.
Isn't this the answer? If it isn't working, try something new. No, not necessarily. but you know what, Jim, you bring up a good point though. But the single biggest factor in education isn't how much you pay teachers. It isn't how big of a school you build or how great of an athletic facilities you have. The single biggest factor in education, anybody will tell you, any teacher will tell you, it's parental involvement.
Absolutely.
But parental involvement matters more than anything, and I do agree that parental involvement is the biggest thing lacking. But parents have actually relinquished the right to raise their children and handed it over to their teachers, and the teachers don't necessarily accept it gladly. But as far as the teachers fighting for I've debated with several of my teacher friends. I said the very best thing that could happen to you in your career is the voucher system. And when you first say that, their hair stands up in the back of their head and they get angry and they say, "No, that's not." And I say, "No, let me ask you a question. If every engineering student that came out of college, when they came out, they had one place they could go for a job, the public engineering system, and that was the only place they could go for a job, would they ever have a chance of having a great career, a really fulfilling career, or anything like that at all if they only had one potential employer? Well, if they ever had a voucher system where you could take that voucher, parents could get a voucher, and they could send their kids to whatever school they wanted, whether it was religious, secular, private, public, whatever school they wanted. And at that point, now these schools, like for example, Muskegon Catholic Central, that pays their teachers probably 60% of what they would make in the public school system, if that, suddenly now, for the first time in decades, could compete. They could compete for teachers with the public school system. That would be the best thing that could ever happen to these teachers. Now teachers could go in there and they could maybe negotiate a deal where they only worked part-time and another teacher filled in part-time. But they could work out a deal where they could teach certain aspects of subjects that weren't allowed to be taught in the public school system, or they could negotiate for wages or time off. The point is, now you have people competing for their services. I think the best thing that could happen to teachers potentially is to have the voucher system.
Well, I would somewhat agree. I agree with the voucher system, but I'd like to maybe take the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey might say. These teachers that you speak so kindly of actively support and 100% fund arguably the most powerful political force in the United States, and that is the MEA here in Michigan and the NEA nationwide, which is the National Education Association, which is the teachers' unions. And the reason that we don't have an expansion into vouchers or into choice opportunities that are overwhelmingly, by the way, supported by minorities, certainly the black parents in the inner cities where we know the schools are not even in existence in any sense that we would recognize. This could happen in a minute, except for the fact that these teachers, again, support their union. 100% they support their union.
No, they don't, Jim.
No,
they don't.
Yeah. Well, okay, take your percentage. Take your percentage, but we know 100% of their union money goes to making sure that there is no opportunity for this. So you cannot fix it if you're going to deny why it's happening, and it's happening because teachers and teachers' unions are keeping it from happening.
And to me, that's I don't disagree that the union is part of the issue here, or is a big part of the issue. But when you say 100%, I say, what percentage of the teachers in the union really are liberals or Democrats or support the union? Maybe 58, 59, 60%. So let's not lump them all into one category.
Talk to a teacher before you get down that level. I know many teachers. That percentage is well above 80%.
I'll tell you, to Bill's point, though, there's a lot of teachers that come and buy guns from you at Renegade River. I've got to stop you both for a minute. We're going to go to a break, but when we come back, let's pick up on that. But then another point also, according to Investor, I want you guys to think about this while we're at break. According to the Investor's Business Daily, welfare and not full-time work is now America's #1 occupation. So you guys stew on that, and we'll come back in just a few minutes.
You're listening to News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renagade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renagade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
iHeartRadio has your favorite shows and personalities on demand and free. Listen to thousands of shows, including CNN's Anderson Cooper 360 Highlights, HuffPost Live, and TED Talks. Download iHeartRadio on your smartphone now to listen.
Something's terribly wrong with the home security industry. It's full of middlemen, outrageous prices, and long-term contracts. It's just too complicated and expensive. Protecting your home shouldn't be hard. I have a friend, a Harvard engineer, who created an easy-to-use, amazingly effective, reliable home security system. It's called SimpliSafe. And if I invented an alarm system, this would be it. It's state-of-the-art. It costs a fraction of what you'd expect, and there are no long-term contracts. Again, no long-term contracts. It arrives pre-programmed and works instantly, and it's wireless, so it sets up in minutes with no drilling. You can also sign up for SimpliSafe's 24-hour protection plan that sends police straight to your door in an emergency. Because it's wireless, burglars can't cut the lines. You can even control it from your smartphone. I love SimpliSafe home security systems. Find them at simplysafekim.com. You get a special 10% off and a free on-off wireless keychain remote. That's simplysafekim.com. simplysafekim.com.
Sure, it's fun raking the leaves with the kids and letting them jump in the piles, but bagging them, completely different story. Preferred Lawn Care has you covered. Simply rake the leaves into piles by the curb, and they'll come pick them up for you. Call 231-670-9873 or visit preferredlawnansnow.com.
Business owners, chances are you have a few computers in your office. Maybe a tablet, a smartphone or two. They all have critical business files on them, and if you experience a data loss, you could be in dire straits. That's why your business needs iDrive.com. iDrive protects your valuable data with no per-computer charges. Business plans start at less than $10 a month. Sign up today and save 20% when you use promo code PROTECT with iDrive.com.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
Fox News Radio, I'm Karen McHugh. 36 states do not have their own health care exchanges. Ohio's one of them. Governor John Kasich says with the bungled rollout of Obamacare, he's worried.
The rollout is the least of the problem here. I mean, the rollout looks like a disaster, but in my state, most Ohioans are going to pay higher costs. And, in fact, this is this is not going to control health care costs.
He was in NBC's Meet the Press. Many Republicans calling for the ouster of Health Secretary Kathleen Sebelius, but West Virginia Senate Democrat Joe Manchin says leave her be.
I think she should stay, and I think she will get the job done, and I think she needs to bring people around her, and I think she can do that.
Courtesy ABC's This Week, Sebelius is set to testify before the Congressional Committee looking into the botched startup of Obamacare on Wednesday. Car bombings across Iraq have killed more than 60. A roadside bomb in Afghanistan kills 18 women and children, mostly headed to a wedding. Fox News. We report. You decide.
This report is a service of Garmin. Only a Garmin Nuvi gives you real directions. It's just like driving with a friend who tells you exactly where to turn by pointing out easy-to-see landmarks, buildings, and intersections, like turn left after the gas station. Get a Garmin, the most trusted name in GPS. Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast. A mix of clouds and sunshine today with a high of 51. Southwest winds 15 to 25. Only a few passing clouds tonight, a low of 42 with the west winds 10 to 20. Sunshine and clouds mixed tomorrow with a high of 48. Northeast winds 10 to 20. And a mix of clouds and sunshine for Tuesday with a high of 47. Wednesday partly cloudy with a high of 57. And a chance of rain for Thursday with a high of 58. Keeping you informed. News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Renagade River Show. I'm Mike Hewitt, in with Jim Riley.
I'm here, baby.
And on the line with us is Bill Cooper, who is a successful entrepreneur and former congressional candidate. Welcome back, Bill.
Hi, how you guys doing? I just got a couple texts from people in Muskegon that are actually listening to the show, and coincidentally, they're both teachers. So they're happy. Now, that wasn't intentional, but they're happy with what I'm saying. So I do want to just close out on that subject because I know you want to get to something else. But really, I don't really feel, and I'm not just trying to pile on here, but I don't feel like teachers are the problem, other than all they hear from their union. That's all they get indoctrinated with, are all the reasons why they've got to fight the voucher system, because it would hurt the union. And the union has a lot of power over them, frankly, because they have their addresses and their phone numbers, and they depend on them to negotiate their contracts.
And they're abusing it here in Michigan, too. Now that we have the freedom to work, that we're finding out now that there's a lawsuit just been initiated this past week by Mackinac Center, representing some teachers who have been beaten up by this union. So I understand it's a little frightening to stand up to the thuggery.
Nobody relinquishes power without a fight. That's just that's human nature. In fact, if you look at it on a grander scale, the biggest reason why I think liberalism doesn't work is it doesn't factor in human nature. It doesn't factor in that humans aren't great people. We're very flawed, and people don't relinquish power without a fight. But anyway, we can move on to that.
I wrote a piece on the fact that they don't factor in human nature, so you and I absolutely agree on that. But when we left off from break, we were talking about the Investor's Business Daily.
Oh, yeah.
Welfare, not full-time work, is now America's #1 occupation. What do you think of that, Bill?
Am I supposed to add to that now?
Yeah, what do you think of that? What direction does that? Off right there? Yeah, well, that was it. That's as good as it gets, Bill. What direction?
Okay.
What direction does that put America heading in?
Well, I agree that it's a problem. The really sad thing is, and once again, I'm kind of a contrarian, so I don't want to take the people receiving welfare's side on this whole thing, okay? I don't want to do that. But if you look at it, it's like the really sad thing for those people is that Social Security disability is not a great life. Welfare is not a great life. Yes, in some cases, if you're aware of all the different government programs. I think right now there are like 87 federal food programs, and there are like 126 federal programs for low-income earners, or programs for low-income earners. I mean, if my memory, if that's correct. When you look at these different things, you can take advantage of a lot of them, and you can maybe get by and have a decent life. But really, it's not a good life. It's not very fulfilling. But the sad thing is, if you look at overall the spending in the United States, this is, to me, it's not just welfare. It's all the spending. But do you understand that? I have a friend I consider him he considers himself a moderate. I consider him a liberal. But he always tells me, I don't know why these people just can't get along. Why they can't just reach across the aisle. I'm looking for politicians. I loved it when Chris Christie hugged Barack Obama last year. And, I'm seething when I hear this, but I try to smile and say, yeah, I understand. That's how you feel. They want to see the golden age of politics return. They want to see the golden age of the 70s when they could legislate, argue, and then go have a beer together. And I always say to my friend, I don't want to say his first name. I don't want to say his first name's Kurt, but
Hi, Kurt.
But I say, Kurt, yeah, let's go back to the golden age of politics back in the 70s. Since they made the rules changes in 1972 or 73, our country has run a deficit 39 of the past 41 years. Our country has deficit spent. During the golden age of politics, when they could all get along, they gave each other what they both wanted for their constituents, and they moved on. That is the problem right there, that we can't stop the spending. I agree that there are too many people feeding off the program, and it's going to be the ultimate failure of our country, because once you have, you talk about what percentage of the people are working and not working. It doesn't account for part-time, it counts just for full-time. There are more people receiving some type of government benefit than are working full-time, and I get that, but to me that's one statistic. There's another statistic that says, that there are 46 million American people living in poverty. And even that number, I would dispute that number too, because the definition of poverty in the United States is totally different than the definition of poverty in Haiti. It's two completely different worlds. In 1970, I believe 72% of Americans had air conditioning. Did not have air conditioning in 1970. 72% of American households did not have air conditioning. Today, 83% of people living in poverty in the United States have air conditioning. So when you look at things like that, poverty is not really poverty in the sense, and that's why even the government statistics they use, I don't even really get into those, because it's not, there are not that many Americans really living in abject poverty like most of the rest of the world.
No question about it. Even though when I look at this article regarding the welfare thing, for me also, Bill, it's not about the statistics of who's doing what more. For me, it's about the liberty that's been stolen from these people, not how much pittance they're getting in return for it. I can tell you that, I was born with a heart defect, and I've talked about this on this show before. One of my first jobs was at a bank over in Flint, Michigan, and I had just gotten hired. And when the Michigan Rehabilitation Center people showed up, and I watched them walk by and didn't recognize them, and they went in and had a meeting with my boss to let my boss know that the Michigan Rehabilitation Center would be happy to contribute half of my insurance and my wages, providing I get to keep my employment. This is for a job I'd already been hired on. And throughout all of that term, I've had people tell me, you need to get on Social Security Disability, you need to do this, you got this benefit coming, this program coming. And then now I'm 52 and I look back at my life and I wonder, I've achieved some good things. I've had some successes. I've got 4 beautiful daughters that are all successful on their own now, and 9 grandkids. And I wonder how much of that would I have had if I would have allowed those folks to captivate and control me in such a fashion over what amounts to virtually no money, going to your point.
Right. It's a poor existence, and it's a dependent existence. In fact, you can ask anybody. You can say, "Hey, does the government have the right to tell you what you can and can't eat?" And of course, most of us would say, "Oh, the answer is no." Well, what if they're paying for your health care and paying for your food? If they're buying your food and your health care, now don't they have a right? And most people, even on our side of the aisle, would say, well, yeah, I guess they do that. And then they say, well, do they have a right to tell you what kind of cell phone you can use? Well, of course not. Well, what if they're paying for the cell phone? Then do they? Well, the more rights we give up to our government, the more control they have over our lives. And in fact, if we could just, well, you go ahead and run the show any direction you want, but I mean, that's the thing that's really sad, is that we have so many people in our country that are dependent upon the government. Now, the result of that, or the consequence of having so many people that rely on the government, is the fact that they will typically vote for people who will give them a larger safety net. I mean, Rush Limbaugh said right after the election, he said, it's hard to run against Santa Claus, especially when the alternative message you're sending people is be your own Santa Claus. And that's hard to run against Santa Claus. It's a hard thing to win. A lot of people think that we lost a large percentage of the Hispanic vote because they want immigration reform. They completely overlook the fact that 52% of all Hispanic children born in this country are born to single-parent households, and those people want a large safety net. I think they're misguided in thinking it's all about immigration. No, it's about a large safety net. In 1980, I don't know the number for 1980. In 2012, 73% of black children were born to single-parent households.
Now, listen. We had a fella on the show here named George Moss a couple times. George is a black guy from Flint, and he's I think he's a lecturer at U of M. He's a former principal of a public school. George is just a great guy. But in keeping with what you just said, we talked about at the time we were on a crusade to say what will save America, and I said the only thing you can do to save America is save inner city, and he said no, you've got to save the American family or you've got nothing. And he talked about crime in the black community. He said if you take away the single parent issue, crime in the black community and crime in the white community, the numbers are the same. It's when you reintroduce the single parent number that it becomes so disparagingly different. But listen, one of the things you reminded me of, one of our founders, Ben Franklin, when the people find that they can vote themselves money, that will herald in the end of the republic.
Yes.
You've got a paper. Tell me before we run out of time, Bill, one or two more points from that's that spell where you think we're going.
Well, I've got a list of 10 reasons why I think America's in deep trouble, and one of them is Social Security disability. If I just touch on a couple statistics there, I think in 1982, 585 or 700,000 people in the United States were on Social Security disability. Despite the Americans with Disabilities Act and the workplace requirement improvements and the safety mechanisms that have been put into equipment and the accessibility to handicapped people, despite all the advances we've made in making the workplace safer than it's ever been in history, in 2012, almost 12 million people were on Social Security disability. And there are counties in Alabama and places around the country where 25% of the adult population is on Social Security disability. My last statistic regarding that is every month they keep talking about how we're creating about 150,000 new jobs a month. Now we can argue that 70% of them are part-time jobs and this and that, but even the most optimistic view says that we're creating about 150,000 jobs a month right now. Every month, 250,000 new applicants are being applied for Social Security disability. And when you look at that and the cost to our country and you look at that curve, you look at it's going to ultimately bankrupt our country. I touched on it earlier too. So another one of my topics is just spending, but it's this is another just general statistic. But if you add up all the private wealth accumulated in our country over 238 years, I think it equals about $77 trillion as of right now of total private wealth. Well, currently, people always talk about the $7 to $17 trillion deficit, but we have over $100 trillion in unfunded entitlements. That means bills that are coming due where there is no plan or money to pay for these things. That's almost double the entire private wealth of our country now carries in debt. And we have an entire political party that does not believe that that's an issue. Well, the only possible way that they could think that that's not an issue is if they plan to completely devalue our currency and turn $10 into $5. And if you devalue currency, that's one way. But that is basically generational theft, and it's also an attack on wealth. But the reality is we have almost twice as much debt in our country coming due over the next several years than we have in total wealth. That's another issue there. I know I got to get off here. You guys are ready to go, aren't you?
We love you, man.
Keep going on. And single-parent households is another thing. The percentage of single-parent households in our country, the destruction of the family, is one of the greatest indicators in crime. It's one of the greatest indicators in welfare, and it's something that's an epidemic in our country right now. But obviously, I look at my watch here. I'm assuming you guys have the same clock there. I know we're three hours different, but the top of the hour is still the top of the hour. And
Bill, I can tell you this. One thing is for certain. We don't have enough time to touch on a big, gigantic list that I've got. We've got 2 minutes left on being, I think he was either telling me that or peace. And no, it was backwards, so it's not peace. It was 2 minutes. Before we run completely out of time, have you followed the Medicaid explosion thing here in Michigan?
Yes. Can I give you one statistic on that I think is going to really is the critical thing?
Please.
First of all, it's a principle I have in business. I always say I don't care how great the deal looks, no matter how appetizing the deal looks, no matter how much money somebody's offering you, even if it's cash. Don't walk, but run from dishonest people. Run from them, because you will always end up sorry. You'll always end up in a bad place. Well, the reason I understand that there are a lot of good, well-meaning Republicans in our state that voted for the Medicaid expansion. I don't agree with it. I'm fundamentally opposed to it, but I don't think they're evil because they voted for it. But because I don't trust the other side, because I don't trust Obamacare, there are certain things in there, like, for example, the vast majority thus far in the sign-ups, and even in the states they're touting great success, and in fact like Washington State where they're touting this great success, the vast majority of the new Medicaid sign-up, the sign-ups for Obamacare are actually Medicaid. the federal government's supposed to reimburse around 90% of the cost of the Medicaid expansion. But this is the little catch that most people don't understand, and everybody really needs to know, that the vast majority of the new Medicaid expansions are not people that are going to be reimbursed by the government because they would have qualified for Medicaid prior to the introduction of Obamacare. Does that make sense? The vast majority of people are signing up are people that they just now paid attention and started logging on, and they're expanding Medicaid. So there's going to be a large expansion of Medicaid in the state of Michigan. In my opinion, there will be a large expansion of Medicaid in the state of Michigan that will not be reimbursed at a 90% rate. It'll be a considerably lower rate because there'll be a lot of people that realize, I didn't even realize I qualified for Medicaid. With Obamacare, you get subsidies up to household income of, if you have a household of 5 people, you get subsidies in Obamacare up to a $90,000 household income. Did you guys know that?
I did know. We are out of time, I believe.
Oh,
but listen,
sorry.
Bill, one thing is for certain: we got to get you back on the show because I've got a huge list, and I'm going to guess Jim Riley has a huge list that we never were able to get to. So
you got to hit the mute button when I'm on. You just got to mute me out and you guys talk.
No,
we got to go. We got to go.
Too good for that.